Thank you, Dean and Deans, and wonderful to see you, dear faculty, dear friends, and especially the graduates, the class of 2024. I admit I am feeling a bit envious of you today because I never made it to my graduation more than 3 decades ago. I just had 1 semester to go to complete my COM Master's in Broadcast Journalism when I skipped town. Well, I had the dean's blessing. He kindly used his German connections to help me get an interview and land my dream job in Munich, Germany, at Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, which was a US radio station that was broadcasting across the Iron Curtain. And I was very generously given 5 years to complete my coursework and thesis, and told, seize this opportunity and get to work. And I have to say, it couldn't have been a more exciting time to start this job. It was the summer of 1989, and across Europe, seismic change was in the air. People were taking to the streets in East Germany, and those who could were voting with their feet, a steady stream of refugees fleeing to the West. Nobody knew what would happen next. Would the authorities ease the border controls, or would they go the other way, a violent crackdown? All over Eastern Europe and the former Soviet Union, as the old certainties crumbled, a hunger was mounting, a hunger for freedom, a hunger for expression, for movement, hunger for democracy. And this hunger had been building over the decades of oppression and propaganda, and it grew stronger when factual information about what was really going on behind the Iron Curtain reached people through crackly shortwave radio frequencies. Millions of people risked their lives to tune into foreign broadcast radio stations like Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, like the BBC, Deutsche Welle, and the Voice of America. They were listening in parks or inside with their curtains drawn, cushions buffering the sound. What they got was a taste of truth there, of forbidden facts, and of real journalism. When the Berlin Wall fell that November, we at Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty had the chance to finally speak to the listeners who had been risking their lives all this time to tune in. And it was the feedback that one listener gave us that really stuck in my mind. And this is what he said. He said, "Your program was like a reed in a swamp through which we could breathe." So we had known we were providing an important service, but now we could fully measure and understand the value. We had not just been filling information voids, but giving people something else, knowledge and hope. So why am I telling you this story about my first job? Because, class of 2024, I'm here to recruit you to a cause. I don't know if you can guess what that is, but I can tell you that I think we're on the brink, and you're on the brink of a pivotal global challenge. And I think just by deciding to do your master's in this field, you probably knew that. I think it's one of the most important of our age, and that is to help clean up our polluted information environment. Last year, we celebrated 75 years of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And as communicators, we were especially interested in Article 19. Article 19 is the right of opinion and expression. And freedom of speech, of course, in that article, that right, gets a lot of hype nowadays. But the second half of it often gets overlooked, and that is the right to seek and receive information. And right now, that freedom to receive reliable information is in just as much, if not more, peril as it was when I left Boston University in the summer of 1989. Facts still face the same antagonists as back then. Authoritarians are still silencing critical voices. using lawsuits, online attacks, prison bars. But now the facts face a new challenge. After the swamp, we find ourselves in the fog. I think you might have heard of the saying, the fog of war. It was first attributed to the German military thinker Clausewitz, but now it is used to describe how difficult it is to determine the facts on the ground during conflicts. And from the perspective of the UN, and I think from all of us, we are seeing this in the horrific wars in Ukraine, in Sudan, and it is even more difficult in Gaza, where international journalists are banned and more than 100 local journalists have been killed, making it almost impossible to independently verify what's happening. But the fog of war is not just spreading on the battlefields. There is an information war forged on our social media feeds. The digital revolution has given us access to more information than humans had ever dreamed of, and that is perhaps a good thing. Yet, it has also given anyone with a social media account the tools to publish almost anything, at scale and at will. So in our digital age, the fog is also about losing the facts in the swirling mist of unreliable information. There was a term for it coined during the pandemic by the World Health Organization, the infodemic. And meanwhile, as the infodemic grows, it's also linked to the rise of social media, spelling the decline of public interest media. All over the world, our free press is in free fall. Independent media are suffering what Nobel laureate Maria Ressa calls death by 1,000 cuts. And partly that is because journalism has become harder and more dangerous as a profession. The press vest is no longer offering protection to journalists trying to cover wars and conflicts. In fact, journalists are now frequently targeted. Last year, we saw record numbers of journalists killed as they were trying to cover wars. But this crisis is bigger than that. Some are calling it an extinction-level event. News media are facing a political and financial onslaught. Loss of ads to social media are draining newsroom coffers, and overwhelmed infodemic audiences are turning away. Surveys are showing mounting news avoidance and slumping trust in traditional media. And all the while, the dominance of social media continues to grow. A global survey recently found that 30% of people get their news only from their social media feeds. And these are the feeds that are run on platforms that are powered by algorithms that are designed to amplify sensational content that sparks outrage. They're also algorithms that actively downrank reliable information from traditional news outlets, and even from the content coming from the United Nations is downranked. Journalists, especially women reporters, are subject to vicious online attacks, attacks that are designed to silence them. So, sorry to be depressing, but I think you will agree with me that the impacts of all of this are devastating. According to Reporters Without Borders, press freedom around the world is being threatened by the very people who should be its guarantors, political authorities. So in these news deserts and beyond, what we have now are people, and I'm sure all of us have experienced this, navigating a murky online world of rumor, conspiracy, and pseudoscience, an information ecosystem poisoned with conspiracies and hate. Those same algorithms that prioritize engagement have also turned extremist views mainstream, normalizing anti-Semitism, anti-Muslim bigotry, racism, and other hate speech. and undermining trust in institutions, democracy, in climate science, and in vaccines. In short, trust in facts. And all this as huge leaps in generative AI are setting off new alarm bells. Traffic to news websites could just disappear with new AI search tools that scrape and summarize journalism without paying a cent. AI is also being deployed to create misleading content at scale, fake news sites, deep fakes, content that is so convincing and so personalized that it's so much harder to authenticate. No wonder many people are no longer sure what to believe, and this is what I mean by the fog. But there is good news. The good news is that more people are seeking out reliable sources to clear the air. The good news is that you're graduating here and you're going to help us do this. There are signs that more people are checking back in on news websites and on traditional radio and TV broadcasts. They're turning into news podcasts from established media organizations. People are reading long-form analyses and commentary from trained journalists. And we're seeing, happily, a surge of visitors coming to the United Nations websites, a growth in followers on our UN social media channels that are turning to us for reference and also for inspiration. The news industry is also not sitting idly by. They are demanding AI actors pay fair value to the producers of original journalism that is being used to train their products. And young activists from Encode Justice are organizing to demand that AI protects the lives, rights, and livelihoods of young people. Maybe you are among them, or maybe you're soon to join. Meanwhile, we will soon launch UN Global Principles for Information Integrity, full of recommendations for healthy information ecosystems. There is a new international fund for public interest media that is bolstering struggling news outlets around the world. And there is also a solutions journalism movement sweeping newsrooms that is offering the same rigorous reporting, but adding also ways to solve our most intractable problems. Also, more and more people are just not buying climate denial that's being peddled by fossil fuel companies. They're pointing to consensus science around climate change and the promise of renewable energy. Science that is being communicated by campaigners of your generation that have mobilized a global movement. Friends, at the UN, our vision is a world where we can all live in peace, in dignity, and in equality on a healthy planet. To achieve that, we need governments and communities to come together, to seek solutions, to weigh options, and to take tough decisions. But how can we do that? How can we bridge the divides that are polarizing our worlds if we can't agree on the facts? German philosopher Hannah Arendt once wrote, "Freedom of opinion is a farce unless factual information is guaranteed and the facts themselves are not in dispute. Facts are the foundation on which we build our shared reality. They are the breath of air in the swamp. Facts help us lift the fog." And so that is why, class of 2024, I am convinced that our profession can and does change the world by communicating for a better one. And you're about to play an essential role. Our foggy, polluted information environments are crying out for you and your skills. Here at Boston University, COM, you have mastered the most powerful tools we have to report, to engage, and to empower. As journalists, you can investigate and impart the facts, you can hold leaders accountable, and you can help us understand the world. Top-rate storytellers can deliver critical information while sparking emotions and switching on light bulbs in hearts and minds for good causes. So please, wherever you take your talents next, as journalists, as communicators, as advertisers, or PR professionals. Help us to restore trust. Trust in facts and science and solutions. Help us lift the fog to change our world and to be the reed through which society can breathe. I'll see you out there.